Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 126 of the In a Nutshell podcast. I'm your host, Sean Vowells. I've got Joe Meade with me, and today it's Big Ten football, Week 14 preview. Rivalry week, the final week of the regular season. Still got a ton of games and, rivalries, pride on the line here. We're going to go through the games, and then we're going to hit the Big Ten championship game scenario tool with a couple of things that are going to happen. Joe, we have two Friday games this week on Black Friday. This will probably be coming out on Wednesday night, if I had to guess, maybe Thursday morning. But we've got Iowa and Nebraska starting things off for us on Black Friday on CBS. Iowa going on the road to Nebraska as 5.5-point favorites here. Joe, both teams are going bowling. Both teams can't make the college football playoff. But 8-4 sounds a lot better than 7-5, and that's what the winner of this one will get. What are you looking forward to in this one?
Yeah, I think perception-wise is something Sean discussed on our last cast, uh recapping week 13, that optically this is a huge game for Iowa. I think they made a lot of strides this year, and it's crazy that they could have a worse record in spite of that, especially with what they've done offensively. I think they had one of their worst performances at home against Michigan State and kind of squeaked it out because of the special teams saving their you know what. Nebraska, let's face it, against teams of similar caliber to them, they've been absolutely dominated on the both lines of scrimmages. So I'm looking for Iowa to do more of the same here with Kamari Moulton, and I really think Gronowski too can also keep Nebraska pretty honest. Nebraska, I think Emmett Johnson can hit some chunk plays, and I'm not saying the run game is in any way a reflection of Emmett's abilities. His O line has to be a lot more consistent. They've blocked well for him in certain games. And then you have games like last week where after the first run, Penn State just dominated and they couldn't protect TJ Lateef, who I think ever since he's entered the USC game has done a pretty solid job for what you'd expect from a backup pseudo freshman. I'm looking at this game for Phil Parker to probably mess with TJ Lateef a lot. I think they're going to try to I think they'll be able to take away the run. I think Iowa's offense should just go into full conservative protective mode in this game. I don't think they need to give Nebraska a short field. I don't think they'll be able to protect TJ Lateef. And if they can't establish the run either, it's going to be pretty hard to score consistent points on Nebraska without too many chunk plays. So I have Iowa winning this game, Sean, 24-14. I just think it's probably going to be a pretty typical, boring Big Ten West game, and I think Iowa and Tim Lester would be suited best, keeping this a pretty run-heavy game and not passing into too much of Nebraska's secondary, which has still been pretty solid most of the year.
And that's what Vegas thinks too, Joe. The total here is just 38.5. We've got the weather's supposed to be just about at freezing at 32. I think Iowa gets out to a 7-0 lead, and they sort of play the field position game from there. They don't have to hit a bunch of explosive plays, but at the same time, like, I think if they just lead from the front, they're going to win this game. Like, if you make Nebraska chase the game, um, it's not going to go well. So I'm going to go Iowa 20, Nebraska 13. All right, Joe, we've got the game for the Old Oaken Bucket in West Lafayette on Friday night between Indiana and Purdue. 7:30 on ESPN. Purdue still looking for their first Big Ten win of the year, and potential spoiler, and Indiana is looking to go 12-0 in the regular season. They are 4 touchdown favorites here going into this game, which will be a cold one, supposed to be under 30 degrees. What's going to be interesting here?
Yeah, I mean, probably not a whole lot to be honest. I think if Indiana plays to half of their ability, this game should not be competitive by halftime. I think Purdue's going to pull out all the stops. I think Coach Odom and Ryan Brown have done a pretty good job this year. Year one in a system, year one at Purdue. They've been close in a lot of games. Unfortunately, this won't be one. I think Mendoza, in spite of who's injured, kind of rolls, tries to stat pad more for the Heisman, and I think probably by the third quarter, these guys are going to be taken out of the game in preparation for the Big Ten title game. I got Indiana winning this one 42-6. I think it probably could be worse than that, but I think Indiana shockingly might take their foot off the gas pedal in preparation for playing for that number one overall seed next week.
In the last couple weeks for Indiana, they've been slow-ish starts, but then they've gotten the margin to where you'd expect. Don't know personnel-wise whether Elijah Surratt or Drew Evans will be back. I would lean towards no for Surratt. I think with Cooper and Williams and the emergence of Charlie Becker, you should be able to go without Elijah Surratt playing in the real cold. Like, if you can save him for this week, Indy is indoors, like on turf. If you can play in 28, you can play in that. I think Purdue offensively is not going to be able to do much. I think that's why Indiana has been able to sort of win these games, despite not really being as sharp offensively as they have been. I think it would be, if Indiana can keep them in single digits, I think they'll be in good shape even with a slow-ish start. But if you're looking for Mendoza to continue to be accurate, make good decisions, throw on time, throw on target. He's done all of that this year. If he can do that, this game will be over relatively quickly. I'm going to go Indiana 37, Purdue 8. All right, Joe, let's turn the page to Saturday. And we're going to start off with the one that is the biggest game of the year in terms of TV in the channel drafts. Fox gets the first couple picks. This is the one that they take first. Big noon kickoff in Week 14. We'll be going to Ann Arbor for the big game, where number 1 Ohio State will be looking to go 12-0 in the regular season and get to Indy for the first time since before COVID. And Michigan, on the other hand, is looking for win number 10. They have a chance at Indy as well, and a backdoor spot at the college football playoff potentially. As cool as last year was, Joe, the stakes are doubled and maybe even tripled for this one. Ohio State minus 10.5, 44.5 total, 30 degrees in Michigan. You might get some snow. What are you looking for here?
Yeah, a whole lot of the line here, for Ohio State, it's kind of that Fox said. They want to reset the clock. I think that's kind of been the one. I think they've had about probably since COVID, probably top two or three, along with Georgia, most successful program, along with Michigan. And the only reason Michigan's even up there is because they've beaten Ohio State, right? So look for Ohio State. This is a ginormous deal to them. I know, they might fade that the Natty's more important, which, to be fair, it probably is. But this is the one thing Ryan Day hasn't done. He hasn't beaten Michigan with his players. In 2019, the argument is, and that was an argument from a lot of Ohio State fans who wanted him gone, believe it or not, after last year's game, is that he didn't do with his players. So this is his chance to disprove that notion. Um, for Michigan, I think it's pretty simple. If they win, I think they're in the college football playoff. I'm not going to lie. You're not going to beat the committee's consistent number one team and not move up from like what'll be 15 or 16 come Tuesday, uh, to like 12. You're going to go up to 10 or something. And then you get to the bid Steelers thing, which we won't worry about. Getting to the game itself, Sean, this is fascinating because I think the chess match between Chip Lindsey, Patricia, Wink Martindale, Hartline, and Day is going to be something for the ages. I think Ohio State kind of was obsessed with the fact that the winner of this game had more rushing yards in each iteration of the game. Last year, it drove them crazy. I think this year, with the passing attack they have, I think they're going to really test Michigan's secondary. I think at times against Maryland, it showed plenty of faults. Like Jair Hill was beaten one-on-one coverage several times. This is a game where Wick Martindale is going to have to employ the 2021 Mike McDonald theory, which is I'll give you 20 yards, I'm not going to give you 60. Because if you let Ohio State rip a big play early, that big house is going to have a lot of doubts as someone who's been in the stadium where Ohio State struck early. This is a game Michigan has to get ahead and stay ahead. Ohio State all year, to their credit, hasn't been in a close game. They've never really trailed. And to get Ohio State to trail, that's how you're going to get them off. It's not necessarily that they're going to lose. You just have to make Ohio State be in a territory they're unfamiliar with, especially a Julian Sid, who's been phenomenal all season. Can they get pressure on him? Can they maybe trick him in coverage? Um, that's going to be the question. I do believe Cardell Tate and Jeremiah Smith will be playing. I don't know if
It
Cardell Tate will
certainly
be
seems
full
like
go.
it. It seems
Yeah,
like it.
I don't know if they'll be full go, but I will say Ohio State will have to establish that run game at some point in this game. to keep Michigan honest. If they're just going to do the pass, 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 which I don't think they will, it could be pretty interesting. For Michigan's offense, I actually think it's pretty simple. I don't think Matt Patricia's that uncomfortable with Michigan moving between the 20s through running and through Underwood's kind of like short passes to Andrew Marsh, Donovan McCulley, the tight ends. I think where he's going to bait Bryce is within the red zone. I think Michigan's best bet if they get into the red zone is try to win the phone booth fight. I don't think they want to test exotic coverages by Ohio State. I think Matt Patricia kind of tooled with Arch Manning week one, and ever since then, teams have been afraid to do that, and frankly, with good reason. I don't think Michigan wants to be in too many obvious third and passing situations. I think they want to have a pretty simple game plan for Bryce, and I think they need to run Bryce a lot in this game. Jordan Marshall will be full go in this game, and I think when he's not running, as much as Bryson Cusdell's done well, I think Bryce needs to run 7 to 8 times in this game to unlock a new level for the Michigan offense.
Yeah, last year, Joe, you said it. Ohio State tried to beat Michigan at their game. They found themselves in a close game and they made a few mistakes and they ended up losing. Like, that will be different this time around from Ohio State. But the problem is that this year's Michigan team is better than last year's. So it the beginning of this game is so important. It's what every mid-major basketball team's mindset is going into a game against a better opponent. Every time you get back to the huddle, be in the game. Every media timeout, be in the game. If Ohio State's had a few slow starts here, they were losing to Purdue at the end of the first quarter. Michigan's got to be winning at the end of the first quarter. All right, if you can do that, then be within a possession at halftime. And then if you can do that, be within a possession at the end of the third quarter. And then if you get in a game at the end where Ohio State, foreign territory on the road against their rivals, team they haven't beaten in 5 years, that's the formula that you win the game. If Ohio State punches first, they're up 14-0 with 5 minutes to go in the first quarter, I think you can book the tickets to Indianapolis. But this first quarter is so important. And you'd have to think, like, this is totally on Ohio State. If they play anywhere close to their ability, they're going to win this game by double digits. If they fall victim to some of the mental traps that Michigan will set, they could find themselves in a game. And we have to remember, Joe, they have not really been in a close game all year. Maybe week one against Texas, who they dominated and only gave up a touchdown to with 2 minutes left. They have not been in a close game. Julian Sayin has not really been under a lot of pressure. They haven't really made him play behind the sticks, so if Michigan can do enough of that, they could find themselves with a chance. And then in terms of Ohio State's defense, nobody's gotten more than 17 points on them this year. And they've been doing that by sort of just being really solid. They haven't really needed a ton of negative plays. And I think Michigan's going to try and avoid that. If they have, 7 to 8 tackles for losses and sacks, like, it's going to be really hard for Michigan to score. But Michigan's offense seems to be coming around, especially if Marshall could go. You've got 2 real threats at wide receiver. You have a quarterback who is a threat on the ground. Like, there is a formula here to Michigan competing in this game. But Joe, before we move on, let's get the score prediction here.
Yeah, I think it's as simple as this. If Michigan scores the first TD, in 9 of their 10 losses, they didn't score the first TD. So that is so important, as you said, Sean. What I think is ultimately going to happen, I bet Ohio State probably punches first. Michigan stays within it. And what's been the theme all year with Michigan is in their 2 losses, there's been a play in those games. The USC game was the 3rd and 26 when we were down 7. They didn't make the play. Down 21-7, that same game, Andrew Marsh could have squeezed a TD in the end zone. Tough play, didn't do it. Threw a pick the next play. Oklahoma missed an interception, missed a sack on Mateer. They go up 21-7, while Michigan was down 14-7, had all the momentum. There's going to be a play like that in the third quarter where Michigan's going to have to make the play to stay in the game. Unfortunately, I bet it's going to be the defense, and I think the defense at that point will be tired out because the offense couldn't have kept drives going. So give me the Buckeyes to win this one and snap that 6-year losing streak to Michigan, and they'll reset the clock and win 31-16 on their way to Indianapolis.
I'm going to go a really close one, Joe. Ohio State 30, Michigan 27 in overtime.
Wow, that's the same score as 2016. That's a wicked score.
I think Ohio State finds themselves in trouble at a point in this game, but I think that their offense is just going to be too much in the end. I think Michigan actually does score. They do get on the ground. They do get the crowd in it. There's a point where everybody in the nation realizes, are they really going to do this again? But then Julian Sayin and Ohio State will come down the field, tie it, send it to overtime, and then win it in the extra period. But I'm excited for this one. It should be a pretty good one. It could be a crazy range of scores here. I think Ohio State could win by 28, or Michigan could win by 10. We'll have to see. All right, the last game with real Big Ten championship game implications is old rivalry out west from the Pac-12. 3:30 p.m. on CBS. We've got Dante Moore in Oregon going to Seattle to play DeMond Williams and Washington. Joe, Oregon got their 10th win last week. College football playoff chances looking good. They are 6.5 point favorites here. Washington at this point only really trying to play spoiler. Should be an interesting one with pretty big implications here.
Yeah, I think this is a big game for the Washington offense. Kind of what we talked about at our Week 13 recap was Washington's offense has done great against the bad teams and against the average teams even. It's been the more elite defenses, the Michigans, the Ohio States, and the Wisconsins, because Wisconsin, as we know, is good at stopping the run. That's provided a lot of the issues for the Huskies. Uh, I hope they have Denzel Boston back for this game. I really don't know what's going on with Jonah Coleman. I thought Adam Muhammad was sufficient enough at running back. Um, you know, Oregon wise, I think the offense had their best performance of the year against USC. I don't think they'll necessarily score 42 at Husky Stadium. This is a rowdy, rowdy environment. I mean, there's a reason Washington hadn't lost a home game there until this year since 2021. Um, I think this is going to be. I think there's going to be three closer than you think rivalry games. Everyone's going to pick Michigan, Ohio State. I happen to think it's going to be this game, Auburn, Alabama, and Tennessee, Vanderbilt. Which actually that'll be a close game regardless. But getting back on track here, Sean, I do think that Washington's uncertainty with Boston and Coleman is giving me a lot of pause. This 7.5 spread's interesting. Before I give my pick, I want your take.
I don't know if Washington can keep up offensively with Oregon. I think the game script here might be pretty similar to what just happened last week against USC. Washington probably has, the dogs to, match the first two touchdowns of Oregon and be down a field goal at halftime. But I think Oregon is efficient enough to win this game by a couple scores in the fourth quarter. Washington's offense has not shown it against a defense of this quality. Everyone loves to talk about Oregon's offense. It's good. Their defense is pretty good too. And they haven't given up a ton of points really in any game. Trying to remember, I don't believe anybody scored more than 30 against them, and that was Indiana, and I don't know if anybody else has gotten to 24. I'll have to check that, but I think Oregon's offense is just going to be too much.
I'm gonna ride or die with Washington. I picked them for my college football playoff, and I know the moment I pick against them, they'll shock the world. Uh, I just am not going to believe Washington's going to lose two home games. I think they're going to go all out in this one. I think this kind of team with nothing to lose is a dangerous mindset for Oregon to be playing against. I do think Oregon's offense is probably going to be messed with a bit. I don't would be shocked if Moore throws a pick or two. Give me the Huskies to pull off the upset shot, 34-31.
And where does that put Oregon then? Are they still in the college football playoff?
It'll depend on the other games. I think they're probably the last team in because I don't think Michigan, Texas, or Vanderbilt's going to jump them. In which case, if you're Oregon, if you lose this game, you cheer against every two-loss team.
And you cheer for
So you
Texas
cheer against
Tech.
Bama, you cheer for Texas Tech, you cheer for no bid steals.
Yep. I think them in the two-loss pile might be interesting. If you're a Duck, just don't get yourself into that
No,
conversation.
just don't even jump in the pot.
Yep. And I think if I had to guess, I do think they'd still be above Alabama, but I think they'd be behind Oklahoma and, Notre Dame and Ole Miss potentially. Ole Miss only has one loss, but
They lose the Egg Bowl, yeah.
yes, But if they lose the Egg Bowl, I think they're below. But also, they could win and not be in the SEC championship, and then where does that put them? But yeah, don't. Conversations are meaningless if Oregon takes care of business here. I think they do. I'm going to go Oregon 38, Washington 24. All right, Joe, we've got another rivalry game up here in Minnesota as Luke Fickell and the Badgers head up there looking for win number 5. Potentially could get into a bowl game with 5 wins because of how hard their strength of schedule is. How have things changed up there? And then PJ Fleck in Minnesota looking for win number 7, looking for an over 500 mark in the Big Ten. They're 2.5-point favorites here at 3:30 Eastern on FS1.
Yeah, this screams another Big Ten West game. I mean, it is what it is. Um, Over under 38 and a half in this one. Shows
28
me,
degrees too.
yeah, shows me that they don't have a lot of confidence Carter Smith and Drake Lindsey or Arthur Simmons are going to let it rip per se, and I can't say I blame them. Uh, this is going to be a game. Can Minnesota find other ways to attack Wisconsin except the D line? I think in the conditions that's going to be very difficult. I think relying solely on Darius Taylor's a dangerous strategy. We saw that backfire against Illinois, you know, and the fact they couldn't pass really hurt them. Um, I think the sole advantage Minnesota has, to be honest with you, momentum wise, is that they're at home here. I think Drake Lindsey's played pretty well in clutch situations throughout the year, and I think this whole game's going to be a tight. Like I don't see a team taking more than a touchdown lead in this game. So, in which case, Sean, I think for some reason everything's telling me to pick Wisconsin, but I'm just not going to. I think Minnesota's had the clutch gene work against them lately against Northwestern, and then kind of when you count the Gophers and PJ Fleck out, that's when they'll pull a Nebraska. They'll win 24-6 over them. When they're down and out against Michigan State, against a new young hot shot quarterback, they come down and tie the game. So I'm going to bet on Minnesota's ability to do that. I think Minnesota ekes out a 20-17 victory in overtime. I think 4 quarters isn't enough to separate the teams, and I think Wisconsin's inability to air the ball out is ultimately going to cost them. I think the D line is going to shut down the run enough for Minnesota. I mean against Minnesota, but I think Drake Lindsey makes a few more plays than Wisconsin's two QB committee.
Yeah, I think this is maybe first to like 17 wins. And I think it's going to be Wisconsin. I'm going to go Wisconsin 17, Minnesota 14. I think defensively that they have taken a huge step and they have looked, if they can just get their if they can just get a few first downs and just get their defense a little bit of rest, it goes a long way, as they have done here. They did it in the Indiana game a little bit too. They got a few first downs, they got a touchdown early, and they ended up being down by just 3 at halftime, and then an opening touchdown and then a fumble, and then that's how that game went out of control. But I think Wisconsin wins it. I think Minnesota is sort of looking for exactly what they're playing for here at the end of the year. All right, Joe, same time, 3:30 p.m. Eastern on the Big Ten Network. Got Terry Smith and Penn State coming to the Garden State to play Rutgers at 5-6, looking for bowl eligibility. Penn State minus 11.5 here. The bowl eligibility bowl on tap here in Jersey. What do you got?
Yeah, definitely not what I was expecting out of this matchup in August or even late September. But I think a big game for both teams. Penn State, they've kind of been riding the Terry Smith wave ever since that Iowa game where I thought they played really well. And frankly, all the games they've played, I've been pretty impressed with them. Even the Ohio State game where they were blown out. I think they've put forward great effort. You could tell the kids want it. And you could tell Katron Allen is a monster, something we kind of got licks of last year, but since he's had to be on full display since Aller's injury, we now know that as a fact. I'm pretty surprised the line's 11.5 here, shot. I think Rutgers does a lot of good things on offense. I think Athan Kaliakmanis has had one of the low-key really good seasons in the Big Ten. I do think, it's probably recency biased a little because they went up against the number 1 defense in the country and didn't do much of anything. Can Rutgers' O-line protect Kaliakmanis? I think Penn State's defense still has its flaws. I think while talented and while Jim Knowles has dialed it up, they've still given up a lot of points to, the Indianas, the Ohio States, and even the Iowas of the world. I think there's a world Rutgers could definitely score 20 in this game, and that the first one to 25 here wins. I just don't think Rutgers all year This has been one of the more putrid defenses Shiano's had in his second tenure back at Rutgers. I just don't trust them to stop Katron Allen and the efficiency of Ethan Grunkemeyer. Um, you better believe Rutgers wants to win, Sean. I don't think they have not beaten Penn State since Rutgers joined the Big Ten in 2014. So this will be a game with two highly motivated teams. I just think Penn State ekes it out at the end. Give me the Nittany Lions to win 28-21.
I think Penn State rolls them here. I think they've been playing some great football. Like you said, they lost a few close games to some really good teams. They're down by one at halftime at the Horseshoe. And then they've had two pretty big wins here the last 2 weeks. I think they jump on them early and win by a ton, 38-17, Penn State. All right, Joe, 4:30 p.m. on NBC. We've got the LA Bowl between UCLA and USC at the Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum. USC, their playoff hopes are gone, but their chances at a 9-3 season aren't. They are 20.5-point favorites here. Do you think Lincoln Riley and the Trojans get the job done?
Yeah, I think, they kind of just go to work here. I think Lincoln Riley was a little defiant in his post-game presser. I do think I think the expectation that changed midseason with the USC had to be a playoff team. I thought if they got to 9 wins and 10 in a bowl game, it would have been a really successful season, and everyone wonders what they're up to next year with that really good recruiting class coming in.
Number one in the
So,
country.
so yeah, it's still to this day. So I think USC kind of goes to work here. I think they take it to UCLA, who, even though they beat them last year, they kind of have messed with them in years past. So I don't think USC allows any doubt to occur. I think USC wins this game, Sean, 35-17. I think they do a good job shutting down UCLA. I think they get to Nico a lot, and I think they put some more highlight reel on these receivers' tape.
I think they roll easily too. They don't seem like the group that's gonna wither away anymore. Like I think those players are gone. I think they Mayava they still have a lot to play for the ones coming back next year, for the ones with NFL draft prospects. I'm gonna go USC 35, UCLA 13. All right, Joe, 7 p.m. on Fox Sports 1. We're going to the home of the Detroit Lions, Ford Field, as Maryland is playing Michigan State. Michigan State, 3.5-point favorites here as they're looking to end the year with a Big Ten win. We've got Maryland at 4-7 also. Don't think they would be in a bowl at 5 wins, but you never know. Joe, my question is why is this game at Ford Field?
Uh, because Michigan State probably doesn't want to see an empty Spartan Stadium. It looked pretty putrid last weekend against Penn State, and I don't think they want that to happen. And frankly, they've picked the two good years to do it because in 2023, Spartan Stadium would have been 30% full with Penn State fans when they played the Ford Field game. Quick side bit: Ford Field is having the Lions on Thursday, the Michigan State high school state championship games on Friday night, and then Saturday night we'll have this game. I'm wondering whether the combined attendance well, definitely combined. I'm wondering whether the Dexter versus, uh, God, I forget who they're playing, or the CC games. Those are two kind of bigger high schools in Michigan are going to have more of a crowd than this one because, man, it's going to be tough to see two non-bowl eligible teams go at it.
In an NFL stadium, too, with a lot of
Yeah.
seats.
I mean,
Yeah.
I think the MSU crowd here is going to be probably more the Metro Detroiters just looking for something to do on a Saturday night. But I think with, Blackout Wednesday, Thanksgiving, Friday night, I don't think this will be that packed. To the actual gameplay itself, Sean, Michigan State really needs to find that first win. They cannot go winless in year two of Jonathan Smith in this conference. I think they've been close in two games lately, Iowa and Minnesota. I think Alessio's played really well considering he's like getting destroyed every other play because his O line hasn't really done a great job protecting him. Um, Look for Malik Washington to play make in this game. He's going to try to put a lot of stuff on film for next year. I think Maryland's receivers need to catch the ball in this game. This is a fundamental game, Sean. Whoever wins the turnover battle, whoever just makes the simple plays wins this. Um, I'm going to pick Michigan State here. They are favored by 3.5. I do think they win this game, get to 4-8, get that Big Ten win. And frankly, from what I'm hearing, I don't think Jonathan Smith will be getting fired. So I think this is a game that he's going to coach very hard. I think even though there's going to be plenty of doubt Don't give them more down. Don't get a ninth loss. Don't go 3-9. MSU wins this one 24. Actually, sorry. MSU wins this game. I think they score a lot. MSU wins this game 31 to 21.
I'm going to go Michigan State 21, Maryland 20. I just think it's going to be a weird game. Like, cavernous, empty NFL stadium, not much on the line at night. Like, fans, this is not going to be a game that we're really locked into after being locked in on all the other games. But somebody does have to win it, so I'm going to go with Michigan State. All right, 7:30 at the same time, Joe, on Fox is the Northwestern Wildcats heading down to Champaign to play Illinois. Illinois 7.5-point favorites here, looking for win number 8. Northwestern, notably, clinched bowl eligibility last week. You can go to this game for as low as $6 here, Joe, according to the ESPN GameCast. But Illinois, not a whole lot on the line here, probably, other than which bowl these teams will be playing in.
Yeah, I actually think Northwestern has house money here. I think Illinois, kind of like Iowa, Nebraska, they're kind of playing for optics here. And playing
Yeah.
for optics, it's important. And I know it's a rivalry, but I think Northwestern's going to be playing a lot looser in this game. I think they've had two straight offensive performances against some solid to good defenses in Minnesota and Michigan. Uh, that have encouraged me a lot about Preston Stone. I thought he was kind of reckless most of the year. Perhaps he's turned the corner. Perhaps Caleb Kobalafe, too, could have a good game rushing. And I think if they play complementary football, something Wisconsin did, and get home on Luke Altmaier a few times, this could be a really interesting game. Ultimately, I am going to pick the Wildcats to pull the upset here, Sean. I think they do get to 7-5, and I think, maybe David Broad, like I've been hinting, maybe he's like the dark horse in some of these coaching cycles. Maybe not the big ones, but maybe into next year, his name gets floated. Let's say Michigan State holds on to Smith, and then all of a sudden he's dismissed mid-year next year. David Broad could be a name being brought up, or any other Midwest job, for example. So give me the Wildcats to win this one, Sean. 28 to 24. I think they get their seventh win of the year, and I think that'd be two straight years. Sorry, 2 out of 3 years with 7 regular season wins, in spite of everything that program's gone through post COVID.
I'm going to go with Illinois here, 28 to 17. I just think their mentality has been pretty solid this year, despite not performing all that great. They bounced back from their humiliating loss to Indiana with a win against USC, and I think last week, honestly, was pretty humiliating to get dominated by a team that poor. I think they bounce back here and win in front of their fans and have a chance to get a ninth win in a bowl. I think Northwestern may have emptied the clip last week a little bit with emotionally and with some of their luck, and they played really well, especially offensively. So I think Illinois gets the job done. All right, Joe, that is all the games, but let's turn it over to the Big Ten football tournament seeding generator. We have got the current records of all the teams, and I know this isn't the best for you, Joe, because you can't really see it, but I'm just going to have to hang in there with me. We've got the... Sorry, let me flip it over here. It's not being all that. Okay. All right, we've got the game. We've got the games next week. We've got the current standings. So, Joe, let's go down the games and give a... Let's give an early idea here of what possibly could go down. So Nebraska and Iowa are squaring off first. Let's give Iowa the victory. Indiana, Purdue, Indiana. Illinois, Northwestern. Let's go with your prediction of Northwestern first. Michigan, Ohio State. It becomes a lot more fun, this exercise, if Michigan wins this, but let's go with Ohio State for now. And you might not think all these other games matter, but the big tiebreaker is opponent's win percentage, so it does matter. Minnesota at Wisconsin. Sorry, other way around. Wisconsin at Minnesota. Let's go Minnesota, Michigan State, Penn State, USC, Oregon. Just for... We can switch a couple of these around. All right, let's calculate them. And it would be Indiana and Ohio State. At the top, Oregon, USC, and then Michigan. So, if Ohio State wins, Joe, they're in the Big Ten championship. If Indiana wins, they're in the Big Ten championship. For Ohio State, they will if they lose, they're definitely out because they would not have the tiebreaker to Michigan, because Michigan would have one loss in that situation. And then with Oregon would be in with a win and a Michigan win. Michigan needs to beat Ohio State and have Oregon or Indiana lose. Indiana needs to win, Ohio State needs to win, and Oregon needs to win and have Ohio State win, I believe. Anything you want to add here to this mishmash?
No, I don't think there's going to be any proxy wars either. Like, I don't think a Northwestern Illinois is going to affect, Michigan, Oregon going. I think the two games you got to look at, Sean, with all due respect to Coach Odom and Purdue, are the noon and the 3:30 on Saturday, the Michigan, Ohio State, and the Washington, Oregon.
All right, so let's flip it to Michigan wins and Oregon wins. It would be Indiana and Oregon going. Washington and Michigan win. It would be Indiana and Michigan going. Purdue, Ohio State, and Oregon go. Purdue, Ohio State, and Oregon win. It would still be Ohio State and Indiana because of the tiebreaker. So I think we have one more. We have an Indiana win and a Michigan win and an Oregon win. That would be Indiana and Oregon. Okay.
Yep.
So those are the four teams, and those are the four scenarios that I sort of went through here on the screen. It's pretty simple for the two teams at the top, win and in. If Ohio State loses, they're definitely out. If Indiana loses, it is up. Indiana loses, Ohio State wins. It's still Indiana, Ohio State. Indiana loses, Michigan wins. It's Michigan or Oregon. There's four teams with a chance. Michigan and Oregon need to win and get help, and Indiana and Ohio State just need to win. That's really what it is.
Yeah, and essentially for anyone wondering, Michigan Ohio State rematch next week is physically impossible, based on our scenario.
And Indiana could play any of the other three, I believe. Mm-hmm. And then in terms of Oregon, I think they would have to play Ohio State or Indiana. I don't think they could play Michigan. Yeah, because they already have one loss, and Ohio State and Indiana don't. So let's say 90% chance is going to be Ohio State and Indiana, like we've sort of been saying here for weeks. But there's at least a chance of two others going, and I'm not sure that people thought that was coming as this season progressed. But we've got four teams with one loss or better, and let's go. This website is pretty cool. We've used it for basketball in the past, Joe. It's bball.notnothing.net. They've got other conferences on there too. The ACC one is a total mess if you want to go mess around with that one. Big 12 is pretty set in the fact that it's going to be Texas Tech and BYU. You've got the SEC, which could get a little dicey here with a couple of teams in the playoff hunt. And then, the American Conference, that is still a mess too. There's still 4 or 5 good teams in there. So it's a pretty cool website. And, with a couple games left, it's not really all that fun to do the exercise because there's so many things that you can change around. But now that there's just one game, mess around with it early. I sort of did it on the fly here to come up with the scenarios. But, this time next week, Joe, we're going to have our Big Ten championship game, which we'll do a full preview on and then a recap when it's over. But that's going to be it for us today. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.